From WBBZ-TV Sports, it's time to Beat the Champ. Now, here are your hosts, Paul Peck and Sue NAWOJSKI.
Welcome to Beat the Champ as we continue our run here at the Jamestown Bowling Company. My name is Paul Peck, joined by Bowling Hall of Famer Sue NAWOJSKI. And if week 2 is anything as dramatic as week 1 here was at Jamestown, Sue, we've got ourselves a pretty good treat coming.
Yeah, we do. Chuck wasn't probably planning on even being here after how last week turned out. But here we are, and he has an opportunity to take on 3 new bowlers that have never bowled on the show before.
Yeah, Chuck Jagodzinski, our returning champion, won by 1 pin in order to be here today. And as Sue said, he probably didn't even think it was going to happen. But again, the challenge for Chuck is bowling against guys that are going to have to figure this show out for the first time.
That's right. So there's no preconception as to what he's going to see. We're all going to see it together.
Yeah, and we've got good bowlers coming up, so they're going to put a good challenge on Chuck, so we should have another good week here. We're in Jamestown, the hometown of the NFL Commissioner, Roger Goodell. So we're hoping for inflated scores, but no deflated expectations. It's Beat the Champ in Jamestown, and it's time to get rolling. Match number 1 features Brian Shaffer on the right, challenging our returning champion, Chuck Jagodzinski. And it's going to be Brian who will start things off here at the Jamestown Bowling Company. 40 years old, from North Tonawanda, New York, a bakery team leader at Wegmans. That sounds like a fun job. I didn't bring any trays of anything down for us here. So
that's right.
If he wins, if he sweeps the week and comes back next week, we'll make sure we get that from him. But he's been bowling since he's 3 years old, and quite an accomplishment, an accomplished career for Brian Shaffer. And we get our first look at him on Beat the Champ. And that's the way to put the buns in the oven there for the bakery team leader.
This is probably late in the day for him.
Yeah, that's right. So a good strike to start off with. And here we go with Chuck Jagodzinski, back for his second Beat the Champ show. 48 years old, from Lancaster, works at the Wendy Correctional Facility, been bowling since he's 8 years old. And if you were with us last week, you know how dramatically it winds up that Chuck is here. In his match against Jeff Dio, Jeff went into the last throw of the 10th frame, needing 9 to win, 8 to tie, and he threw and hit 7. And that gave Chuck the 181 to 180 victory.
And that's the strategic factor to choosing whether you're going to start or finish the match. Because when the score is posted, you know what you have to beat. It puts that added pressure on you, and some people would like the pressure, and some people would rather post the score and let someone else chase it.
At Beat the Champ TV and hashtag Beat the Champ on Twitter, and of course the Beat the Champ Facebook page for all of your social media needs. And that's a great way to keep up on the qualifying and the results and the list of players that are competing. So that's the best way for you to stay tuned in to Beat the Champ. So here's our second look at Brian.
A new face to our show.
Yep, making his Beat the Champ debut. He's tried to qualify for a number of shows, and he's bowled well, but it's not easy. And he'll be the first to admit that to you. It's not easy. Bowls in a Wednesday night league at the Rapids Bowling Center with a 232 average this year, the 240 average last year. So really a good, solid bowler is the 40-year-old from North Tonawanda. 51 career 300 games and an 18 800 series. And a spare in the second frame. So we're even up after 2 frames between Brian and Chuck. And we'll tell you a little bit about Brian's bowling history. He's rubbed shoulders and shared lanes with some of the best in town. We'll tell you about that in a moment. There's JANELLE SABIN manning the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard. Spare and strike in the first 2 frames for both bowlers. And a strike in the 3rd frame for Brian Shaffer. And now we go back to Chuck, one of the more accomplished bowlers in Western New York. Even though this is only his second Beat the Champ show appearance, he did qualify for the very first show up at the Rapids Bowling Center, got sick the morning of the show and couldn't make it. So it's taken him a little while to get back here, but he is an outstanding bowler, and with the pictures tell 1,000 words there.
Fate rewarded him with a little twist of luck last week with Jeff's unfortunate carry and his last shot, allowing him to be here, Chuck, to win and be here today.
He has won 4 Buffalo City titles. He's been the Buffalo Bowler of the Year twice. He is the Tri-City Masters champion from 2016. lots of accomplishments for Chuck, and a strike in the 4th frame.
And we talk about the Buffalo Masters and what a big tournament that is in the Buffalo area and how that's the highest echelon really for the area bowlers. But I would say the Tri-City Masters is probably second to that. It's the Lockport area, the Niagara Falls area that they get together in Tonawandas and have their own Masters tournament.
Back to Brian Shaffer. And it will not fall. Boy, I'll tell you, you couldn't have run anything other than you try running a bulldozer over that pin. I don't know how that thing didn't go down. And you can see Brian, the look on Brian's face, he can't believe it either.
Well, it was defying gravity there, but once the machine comes down, it won't count anymore. The pin did fall, so we have to watch them reset the pin because it did end up falling, but it fell due to the rack, and then it doesn't count once the rack comes down.
Brian bowled in high school at Niagara Wheatfield High School, where his high school teammate was Liz Johnson, the Hall of Fame bowler. You know her, Greater Buffalo Sports Hall of Famer and one of the most accomplished female bowlers in bowling history. So Brian goes a long way back with her. Then he moved on to bowl at Buffalo State. NCCC, and really achieved some nice accomplishments there. So he's got to go get this spare, and he does after a disappointing inability of that 7-pin to fall. So 6 individual tournaments wins in college at NCCC, and then 6 more at Buffalo State. You know, an outstanding collegiate and high school career for Brian Shaffer.
As you can see, these two guys are playing the lanes quite a bit differently. Brian is well inside of Chuck. Chuck's playing to the right. Chuck's playing more down and in, using between the first and second arrow as his target. And Brian is way deeper than that.
Just different styles, different ways guys read it.
Different amount of hook. Brian hooks the ball a little bit more, so he's deeper, needs the oil inside of the lane to hold his ball off, basically.
That's a 4-bagger for Chuck Jagodzinski, 4 in a row for Chuck, and he is on quite the roll here. 30-pin advantage at the moment for Chuck Jagodzinski. This is his second Beat the Champ show appearance. Brian Shaffer actually was on Beat the Champ back in the 90s when he was much younger. There's 5 in a row for Chuck. This feels like a good time to take a short break. We'll be right back with more action on Beat the Champ. Welcome back to Beat the Champ. Let's get back to the action here on WBBZ-TV. Bowls 4 nights a week. Sundays at Wimbledon Lanes, Mondays at Broadway, Tuesdays at Manor One, Thursdays at Alden. And the average is pretty consistent throughout those 4 nights, anywhere between 225 and 235. And he's going to leave the 7, the 4, and the 7 on that one. Thought that pin might kick over. A little messenger action did not happen.
Now that ball went a little high on him.
So it was 5 in a row for Chuck, and that streak comes to an end now.
Maintaining a 38-pin lead.
So as we move to the 8th frame, Chuck just needs to play it safe and stay out of trouble here. And
let me tell you, when you hit the pocket every single frame, as Brian has, every single shot that Brian threw could have struck, and he finds himself down 38 pins.
That's tough.
That's the tough part about this sport.
That may be a little bit of why we saw those looks on Brian's face of what more can I do here? So
exactly.
So after the 5 in a row and the 1 spare, Chuck gets another strike, and you can see the updated score on the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard. Don't forget, coming up at the end of the show, we'll have our Gary Poole's Great Grill giveaway. Watch and win word. Then you go to WBBZ.TV and enter to win a Broil Mastered H4 Deluxe Gas Grill from Gary Poole's and Leisure. And boy, saved himself from a 7-10 split there with a late fall, but he's still going to leave the 7-pin as Brian.
Again, it's that angle of entry that's creating some of these odd pin collisions that is just keeping him from being able to carry.
Big hook and a spare in the 8th frame for Brian. We're at the Jamestown Bowling Company in Jamestown, New York. It's week 2 of our 4-week run here with Beat the Champ down in the Southern Tier. The folks in Jamestown have been incredibly hospitable. Great to be down here with some great people and some great bowling in a historic city like Jamestown. We've had a great time down here.
Absolutely, there's a lot to do in the Southern Tier this time of year in the summertime. You know, we've got the 4th of July coming up.
Yes, we do, just a couple of days. And then we're going to talk a little bit later on in our show about the big event going on down here, which is early August, the Lucille Ball Comedy Festival. Some great performers that are going to be down here for that. And we've even got a bowling connection to the Lucille Ball Comedy Festival. We'll tell you about that. Another spare in the 9th frame for Brian Shaffer. And we go back to Chuck, who maintains that big lead of his.
It's definitely worth the drive down here. There's great beer companies. You've got the Southern Tier Beer Company. You've got EBC down here. And you have to stop here for the prime rib.
Yeah, that's right. We enjoyed, the crew enjoyed a little bit of prime rib here the night before our taping. There might not be any left after that. There's a 9th frame strike for Chuck Jagodzinski, and he started that with a 19-pin advantage, and he'll add to that as well, too. And boy, this is really the Chuck Jagodzinski that most of Western New York knows, the guy with 52 300 games and an 849 career-high series, and he is putting on a show here today.
Well, I'll tell you, bowling 4 times a week, you don't see that too much anymore, but it does keep you sharp. And he's picked houses that are historically not super high-scoring houses. I mean, a 235 average at Alden is really impressive. It's an older bowling center, and that is a very, very good average for that place.
8 strikes on the board already for Chuck Jagodzinski. And make it 9.
Very nice. He just drilled this ball up, too. This is the first time he's used it.
There you go, huh? Is that normal that, you know, right off the bat, right out of the bag, you drill the ball and it starts knocking strikes down like that?
Oftentimes, yes.
Yeah, really?
Yes.
There's no break-in period?
There's nothing like a new bowling ball.
All right, gotcha. So let's see how Chuck finishes it off in style. How about that?
I think that's going to be his favorite ball. I'm venturing to say.
10 strikes in the match for Chuck Jagodzinski and a 268 score on the board. How about that?
Well, that's taking advantage of your good break from last week.
You know, I'll have to run through our stats here. That may be one of the highest scores we've had on Beat the Champ in any one match is a 268. Good strike there for Brian in the 10th, but unfortunately, he ran into one heck of a hot bowler here today. Brian had his daughter Savannah and his mom Rosemary here cheering him on at the Tonawanda Bowling Company, and they're going to be proud of him after a good performance. And another one for Brian. Going to put a nice, respectable score on the board here.
That's another thing about bowling. Once you don't need them anymore, they fall down.
Yeah, of course, right? Once it's beyond, right. Once things have been decided, the pressure goes off, then all of a sudden the pins start falling down.
It's like you wonder if there's just that little hitch in your swing. There's that little tightness when it's coming off of your hand.
So one more to finish things out here for Brian Shaffer to post his final score. And how about that? Nice way to finish for Brian. 3 consecutive strikes and a 209. But as good as that match was, it still pales in comparison to the 268 that Chuck Jagodzinski put on the board, and the 2 competitors share a moment there. Boy, that was some really impressive bowling by Chuck.
They both bowled very well. They both hit the pocket consistently. Just couldn't beat Chuck's carry, that's for sure. Yeah,
so we'll talk to both Chuck and Brian and get the recap of this match and set up our next match as Chuck Jagodzinski moves on for his 3rd consecutive match on Beat the Champ. We're back in Jamestown right after this. 10 strikes and 2 spares leads Chuck Jagodzinski to a big win over Brian Shaffer. You kind of ran into a buzzsaw, didn't you?
Yeah, you can't do much about that. Chuck was awesome. He bowled fantastic. I carry a couple more times on the right lane, and it probably would have been a better match, but give it to Chuck. Shot the ball great.
So your first time back on Beat the Champ in about 20 plus years, how was the experience?
Oh, it's fantastic. I can't wait to be back again.
Well, I'm sure we're going to see plenty more of Brian in the future, but we know we're going to see at least one more from this guy.
Chuck, you told me you just drilled that ball.
Yep, yesterday at airport.
Well, I venture to say that's your favorite ball right now.
Right now it is, 'cause none of my balls will finish in this house. So.
Well, whatever it is, I'm sure you're going to keep using it because Chuck's got another match coming up. We'll get you ready for that one as we continue. It's Beat the Champ at the Jamestown Bowling Center. We're back with match number 2 right after this. Match number 2 features Chuck Jagodzinski and the gentleman in the green shirt. That's Jim Lamancuso from Hamburg, but grew up in Jamestown, so he has got the home lane advantage, Sue, because he knows this place. He's grown up in this place. He's bowled an awful lot in this place. How much can that help Jim in this match?
It gives you a comfort level for the bowling center. And, you know, every bowling center has its little characteristics, and when you've grown up in it, you tend to feel like you know what those are.
So here we go, match number 2, Jim versus Chuck. First frame for Jim Lamancuso. And he'll leave the picket fence on the right-hand side, the 3-6 and the 10.
Yeah, little jitters. They had a little break between practicing and then that first shot
Right.
on your hand tends to be, you know, a little rough getting your timing back again after the break.
Not the first time we've seen guys leave some pins on the first throw of a match, particularly when they're making their debut like Jim is. And he'll leave an open frame with 9 pins to start things off. And now we get a look at Chuck Jagodzinski in his 3rd consecutive match, going for his 3rd consecutive win and coming off that electrifying 268 to 209 victory over Brian Shaffer in our just concluded match, where Chuck had a couple of runs of 5 consecutive strikes. And how about that? That run continues.
Great shot. That was a great adjustment.
5 in the last match and 1 in this one. It's 6 in a row overall for Chuck. Well, he's in a good run here,
Chuck
isn't he?
moved his target in a little bit because the oil is to the left of him. So the area he was playing in broke down a little bit. So he's moved everything in. And that was absolutely perfect reaction.
We're at the Jamestown Bowling Company on Foot Avenue in Jamestown. And there's another one for Chuck Jagodzinski. And it may be the home lane advantage for Jim, but Chuck may be setting up a spare bedroom here in the back the way he's bowling here in Jamestown. So here's Jim, 40 years old, been bowling since he was 6 years old, a cumulative average of 225. Jim, full-time job as an inside sales manager for Power Devices Incorporated. We mentioned he lives in Hamburg, but he grew up here in Jamestown. And that's not what he wanted.
No, he's cutting a little bit short. His projection, he is playing deeper on the lane. His ball, very high performance bowling ball. He's looking for a bigger hook, and he's got to project the ball further to the right. He's cutting it short, and cutting it inside, and it's hooking up on him. He has to look his eyes more to the right.
You saw the puffed out cheeks there and a little sigh of exasperation from Jim. Let's see what he can do with this one. Yeah, boy, he had good carry across, but he'll leave it as an open frame. So that's back-to-back open frames, not the way Jim wanted this thing to start. Bowls regularly on Wednesday nights at Wimbledon with a 225 average. Actually took 5 years off from bowling, but he's been back for the last 3 and kind of told us he's really starting to feel like he's back in a groove now after the time off. That's got to be tough. You step away from the sport like that. It's going to take you a little while to get back to the high level.
It is tough to step away from anything for 5 years. And see, he got that one more to the right. That was the target area he was looking for.
So he'll look for a spare here in the 3rd frame. You know, the problem is taking him a couple of frames to figure it out, and Chuck Jagodzinski isn't going to give you much of an opportunity to do that because he's already got a pair of strikes on the board. And that's a spare in the 3rd frame for Jim Lamancuso. move back to Chuck.
This is going to give Chuck a little breathing room here, coming out of the gate like that, and then having that 2 opens to contend with. You know, this is going to make his swing just a little bit looser.
Right. Here he is, 3rd frame with a couple of strikes already on the board for Chuck. And it's more shocking than anything when you see Chuck leave a pin like he did on the 10 pin there. So he's had a couple of runs of, he had 5 strikes in a row, and then he ended with 5 in the first match, and then he had 2 here. So he knows how to put them together. Look at the interesting ball that he's using. I noticed that in the last match.
Yeah.
Oh, and he missed the spare. So an open frame for Chuck, and you saw the arms raised there, kind of wondering what he did.
Yeah, he doesn't miss too many of those, and that ball he's used for a very long time. It's got the boxing glove inside of it.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, he's used it for as long as I remember. But those balls still have a little bit of tackiness to them. They're made out of like a resin material, so they're not as straight as a plastic ball. Most bowlers throw plastic balls at their corner pins, and it has just a little bit of tackiness to it that makes it pick up the lane a little bit.
So there you can see our updated scores on the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard. There's JANELLE SABIN doing a good job keeping us up to date as always. We're early on in this second match of week number 2 here at the Jamestown Bowling Center, and here's Chuck Lamancuso. Learned to bowl here at the Jamestown Bowling Company. Bowled in some TV matches here. First time he was ever on TV was here. Moved on to bowl at Erie Community College. And yeah, you can kind of tell in the look on his face that this is not going the way that he wants it to.
No, he's just he's not extending it out to his target. He's cutting it a little bit short. And it's a ball that actually checks up a little bit, which is perfect if he gets it to his target. But if he cuts it short, it's going to check up and go through the face, go through the head pin.
4th frame. Let's see if Chuck can knock all those down. And he does. Good spare save in the 4th frame. Don't forget, you want to be a part of next month's Beat the Champ as we move to Lockport at Alley Brant Lanes. Qualifying is coming up next weekend, Sue. So it's going to run Thursday, Saturday, and the roll-off is going to be Sunday.
Yes, I mean, it's a great opportunity to make this show because the entries are just a little bit lighter, and some of the big guys are taking the summer off or bowling other tournaments. It's a great opportunity to come out here. As you see, we've got a bunch of new faces to come out and make the show.
Thursday, July 7th at 7 and 9, Saturday the 9th at 12, 2 and 4, Sunday the 10th at 12, 2 and 4, and then the finals 7 o'clock for the qualifying. And there's Jim's first strike, and it comes in the 5th frame. So that's our qualifying next weekend at Alley Brant Lanes up in Lockport. So we're going from one end of Western New York to the other, from
Right.
Jamestown to Lockport.
Get out of the heat.
That's right. Get out of the heat, do a little bowling, make the TV show. Back to Chuck Jagodzinski, 5th frame, and another strike. We're going to be back with more Beat the Champ bowling action in just a minute. Welcome back to Beat the Champ. Let's get back to the action here on WBBZ-TV.
Still a sizable lead for Chuck, even though I'm sure he would prefer to not leave that. They're in lane 17.
There's the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard. You can see the updated scores as we move to Jim's 8th frame here.
We're going to have to see the Jim we saw in practice here, because Jim had a very good shot to the pocket in practice. But 3 strikes in a row here will bring him within 13 pins, so he can make a big difference. Perfect.
Got one. Big one. Maybe a late little comeback here for the man they call Lemon, Jim Lamancuso. career 300 games for Jim, and 834 is his highest set rather. And as we mentioned, stepped away from the sport for a little while, but he's back and starting to find his groove. Just might have run into just about the hottest guy out there right now.
Yeah, he's taking a little extra time on this one. He knows this one's very important.
This is the 9th frame for Jim. Just couldn't get the 10 pin to fall. Really needed that one.
Really needed that one. That was a pesky 10 pin right there.
So a little bit of the, a little bit of the curse of the first time beat the champer is that, it's taking a little while for these guys to get things figured out, and we just the first time guys take a little while to feel themselves out.
Especially when you're coming up against a hot bowler like Chuck posted a big 268 game. It makes you realize that you have to be on your game right off the bat.
I was trying to run through my notes here and see where that 268 game that Chuck put up in our last one, it's off the top of my head, it's one of the highest ones. We had a 278. John Masiello bowled a 278 a couple of months ago, but 268's up there.
And Gary Kenyon shot one early at Rapids, I think. One of our first show, I think Gary had a 268. Wow, that's a big spare right there.
Big spare for Chuck Jagodzinski in the 9th frame. So it's still a sizable 20-plus pin lead.
So the best Jim can finish is a 181, so all Chuck needs is a 182 to shut him out.
And that's a big 10th frame strike for Chuck Jagodzinski as he continues to head towards a 3rd consecutive win. Not a lot of guys have put 3 wins on the board here in Beat the Champ. Only 6 bowlers have won as many as 3 individual matches. Looks like our 7th is going to be this guy.
Yes, it is.
Another strike for Chuck. He'll get one more here in the 10th to post a final frame. Good crowd on hand here in Jamestown checking out our match. Always good to have the support of the local bowling fans, and some of them have come out with no necessarily ties to any of the bowlers, just because they wanted to come watch Beat the Champ, and that's great. Thank them for being here. So Chuck Jagodzinski, after leaving that 1 pin, will post his final score up on the board, and it's going to be another good one, another impressive score for Chuck. A 203 for Chuck Jagodzinski, following the 268 and the 181 in his previous other 2 matches. And Jim Lamancuso will finish things out here in the 10th frame with a solid debut performance, but not enough to get a win.
Just a little more aggravation for Jim out there with the 10 pins standing up and having to shoot that.
I want you to note the gentleman over the shoulder there of Jim Lamancuso in the crowd. Tab Weeks bowled on Beat the Champ back in the 1960s. Jamestown area guy, wanted to come out and check out the action, but we talk about some great history, and there's Tab bowled on Beat the Champ when Chuck Healy was the voice of the show back in the 1960s, and that's great to have some great fans coming out here to the Jamestown Bowling Center to check things out. And again, we thank those guys for coming out and wanting to be a part of this. And so it's a final score posted of 203 to 150 as Chuck Jagodzinski comes up with the victory. We'll talk to Chuck, we'll talk to Jim, and set up our final match of the day here in Jamestown when we come back on Beat the Champ. It's a 203 to 159 win for Chuck Jagodzinski over Jim Lamancuso. That makes Chuck now just the 7th guy to win 3 matches here on Beat the Champ, which Jim tells you it's not that easy to do, and it didn't start off well for you, and I know that's a tough hole to put yourself into.
That was tough. That was definitely not what I was hoping to come out and do. Just made terrible shots and missed a couple easy spares, and it's the game.
Yeah, but you got a chance to bowl in your hometown in front of your friends and family. That's pretty cool, huh?
Friends are here, my parents are here, so it was fun to be back home for a little bit.
All right, good. Well, I know we're going to see plenty more of you moving forward, too, but I know we've got a little more of this guy,
Great
too.
win, Chuck. What happened out there for you today? What are you seeing out there?
The lanes are changing, like the oil's moving down and the right lane is drying up, so you gotta keep moving. I'm moving left and the right and right and the left, but I'm already against the rack and the left lane, so I don't know where else I could go, but maybe the left lane will start drying up for me and be a little better.
Well, we're going to find out very soon.
Yeah, see, the adjustments are the key to being successful on this show, and Chuck's got him down here, and he's got one more match to go. Bill Swiat, his next opponent. We'll get you ready for that match when we come back. It's Beat the Champ at the Jamestown Bowling Company. Just a couple days from July 4th, we're looking for some fireworks here in our final match of the day at Jamestown Bowling Center as Bill Swiat will try to stop the run of the red-hot Chuck Jagodzinski. And there's your look at Bill from Cheektowaga, New York, 31 years old, full-time occupation, works for Urban Insulation, been bowling since he was 6 years old, and a cumulative average of 230. And based on what we saw in the warm-up, Sue, he's going to put a good test here on Chuck Jagodzinski as Chuck looks to win his 4th consecutive match.
Yeah, Bill's a very strong, powerful bowler.
First throw for Bill. Beat the Champ debut, and a little leaning tower of Pisa that finally falls over, and it's a strike on the first throw for Bill Swiat.
Now, Chuck mentioned that the lanes are breaking down for him. He's really playing them differently than how he started out, so this is like a constant moving battle for him of the challenge of the changing lanes.
But so he's got so much experience he almost can master that, can he?
Absolutely. The more you bowl and the more you see things happen, the more commonplace it is for you to make the adjustments. You just automatically know what to do.
So it's 3 in a row for Chuck. He won the final match of last week's show as he beat Jeff Dio in a narrow 181-180 win. And then he has won the first 2 here today over Brian Schaefer, 268-209, and then just off the win over Jim Lamancuso, 203-159, and strikes on the first 2 frames for Chuck Jagodzinski. So again, he's moving himself up the ladder, trying to become just the second Beat the Champ bowler to sweep a weekly show. That's only happened once. It was John Palmer who did it. And he's got a chance to move up that ladder, and this would give him his 2nd weekly win, and only 2 other bowlers have got 2 weekly wins, Palmer and Matt Zazowski. And that one just kind of died right at the end on its power. It leaves a couple of pins for Bill Swiat.
Yeah, we're seeing these power bowlers that are playing the lane a little deeper. If they cut it short, they seem to be going high. And that's what happened here with Bill's shot.
There's Janelle Sabin manning the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard with the early results. Strikes in the first 2 for Chuck Jagodzinski, and looking for a spare here is Bill Swiat. Got it. So he'll slide over to lane number 17 now for the 3rd frame. Bill bowls regularly a couple of nights a week at Wimbledon lanes on Wednesdays and then airport lanes on Mondays. 10 career 300 games, a high 801 series. Former high school state championship bowler in his senior year of high school. And a nice strike right there.
That was a beauty. Did everything right on that shot.
Don't forget, at the end of this match, we'll have our Gary Pools Great Grill giveaway. Watch and win word. You go to WBBZ-TV and enter to win a Broilmaster H4 Deluxe Gas Grill from Gary Pools and Leisure. No purchase necessary. Contest rules and registration at WBBZ-TV. And striking away is Chuck Jagodzinski.
Chuck is showing his veteran knowledge here today because he really is staying right on top of the moves that he needs to make. Looks effortless.
Yeah, really does. You know, again, we talked about Chuck is one of the more accomplished bowlers in Western New York, but this is his first time on the show. Qualified for the very first show up at the Rapids Bowling Center, got sick the morning of the taping and couldn't make it. So this is, like I said, it's a surprise that it's taken him this long to make the show, but been saving it up.
Yep.
Pretty good, isn't he?
Making up for lost time today.
And he has strikes on the first 4 frames. And here's Bill Swiat trying to keep pace. Got it.
He knew off his hand that was very much inside of his target.
Yeah, it almost went straight. And
hit left of the middle arrow, which is the 20 board for us. He hit left of that, and his target is definitely to the right of that. So he really cut that short.
But that was just a power that knocked the pins down, wasn't it?
It was a Brooklyn's. It was, looks good on paper. You can't tell how he hit it, but desiring to hit the right side.
Goes
of the
down as an
pocket,
X
not
on the
left.
board,
That's
right? Nobody asks why. Not a Y,
Nope,
but an X.
sometimes you gotta just take those.
And that one, not quite exactly what Bill wanted to do, as he splits the pins there and he leaves 3, and he'll have a little work to do on an interesting split. Yeah, that says it all, doesn't it?
Yep, we're seeing these power players having little trouble. They don't have a whole lot of room. They got to be really perfect. When they're perfect, it sets up perfect. But here he shot that one through his target, as opposed to the one he cut short. He overcompensated, shot it through his target. It didn't recover. So now he got a light hit split.
So he's going to leave 2 and a 5th frame open here for Bill Swiat. And once again, you leave the door ajar for Chuck Jagodzinski, and he's going to run right through it. And we'll see if he responds now. He's got strikes in the first 4 frames.
Well, he's doing exactly what he needs to do, and that's putting pressure on these young bowlers who have not bowled on TV and are fighting the jitters on top of it.
5 in a row.
No, this does nothing but relax you when you're in this position.
Yeah, I bet. The 48-year-old from Lancaster is putting on a clinic here in Jamestown. Got his wife Michelle and his son Noah in the crowd watching him, and the run of perfection comes to an end there. I was starting to think a little bit about the fact that we had not had a 300 game yet on Beat the Champ since we've started, and boy, the way Chuck is bowling, I was thinking maybe this is the time, but not gonna happen. So he'll leave an open frame. Not bad, boy. That came pretty close to grabbing that spare, but it'll be a 6th frame open for Chuck to match the 5th frame open from Bill, but it's still a very sizable 50-pin lead for Chuck Jagodzinski at the moment. Bill Swiat, inspired by his dad John and his brother Andy, who've been bowling most of their lives, and Dad was always the one to offer up the advice while Bill was bowling, and as Bill says, it's part of the reason why he bowls now, because of the inspiration of his dad, and Dad would be happy with that strike. The action will continue on Beat the Champ in just a minute. Welcome back to Beat the Champ. 7th frame for Bill Swiat, trying to hang in there against the red-hot Chuck Jagodzinski. Just couldn't get the 10-pin to fall.
Well, we've seen a lot of that too, where they start getting lined up and getting themselves to the pocket, and then a solid 10-pin to stop you in your tracks. He could have put a little pressure on and got within 20 pins of Chuck, but 10-pin makes a huge difference.
And the spare, the 7th frame for Bill Swiat.
We've got a 30-pin lead for Chuck here, which is pretty commanding when you're hitting the pocket as well as he is.
Absolutely. There are the stats on Chuck. 230 average. And he bowls 4 nights a week, too. Boy, just pounding those pins.
Well, if you notice, Chuck stands very far to the right, and he drifts in. So he's sliding really in the middle of the lane, but he's starting off to the right. The ball return is in his way on lane 17. He's right up against, if you see, he's right up against the ball return when he's bowling. So he's starting to get a problem there. There's no room to move to the right.
Yeah, just couldn't get that flyer over to knock the 10-pin down. Yeah, well, like you said, he's right up. There's no where else is he going to go
after that.
So now he pulls out the ball with the boxing glove inside of it. That's the spare ball, and it works. 8th frame spare for Chuck Jagodzinski. And the lead remains sizable at 50 pins. That big start of 5 consecutive strikes had a lot to do with that. There's the Castellone Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram scoreboard up to the moment. as Bill Swiat rolls in the 8th frame. We're here at the Jamestown Bowling Center, just outside downtown Jamestown. Just leaving that tricky 10 pin again.
Yeah, when someone started out with a 5-bagger against you, you tend to be chasing the whole time. These corner pins just take the wind out of you.
And you can see that line of the first 5 frames for Chuck. Don't forget, qualifying this weekend for next month's series of shows on Beat the Champ at the Alley Brant Lanes in Lockport. You can qualify this Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday at Alley Brant, with the finals for the top 9 qualifier roll-off 7 o'clock on Sunday night.
You know, so that everybody knows, no matter how many qualifiers there are, the top 24 get to come back and compete for the show. And it's all pins are dropped, and you bowl 3 more games. So once, all you have to do is sneak into that top 24, and it's a 3-game match to make the show.
Yeah, a little disappointment on the look on the face of Bill Swiat. Just can't get a few of those pins to drop. Yeah, a little sigh of relief there, or sigh of exasperation maybe. Good performance from him. Another first-time Beat the Champer. We've had a lot of them here at the Jamestown Bowling Company. We've got more of them coming up in next week's show. 9th frame spare for Bill. Takes a little while for those guys to get rolling, the first-timers. We've seen some of them that have come back and had great performances the second time around. Or sometimes maybe you get a little lucky in that first match, a little lower score gets you moving on, and then you start rolling. Speaking of rolling, I'm telling you, Chuck Jagodzinski has been outstanding.
Yeah, he's been fun to watch. His strikes have been very, very perfect. They're beautiful.
They sound perfect.
They do. They're right. They're high flush. They're not light. They're not mixers. They're just high flush. 10 in the pit.
There you go. Another one. So Chuck Jagodzinski is going to put himself at the top of our Beat the Champ statistics. This is going to be his 2nd weekly win. Only 2 other bowlers have done that. It's going to be a sweep of the week. Only 1 other bowler has done that. And it's going to be his 4th overall victory, and only 3 other bowlers have more.
Wow. And this was his first show.
And it was his first show. Yep. I'm gonna let you tell him that.
It's really easy sitting right here.
I'm gonna let you tell him that in our post-game interview how easy this thing is. And it's gonna be an open frame there, but it's not really gonna matter. It's a 226 on the board for Chuck Jagodzinski. So in 4 matches, Chuck's gone 181, 268, 203, 226. Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Bill Swiat will finish things out. Yeah, that somebody's got some glue on the bottom of that 10 pin for Bill.
Yeah, he's tired of looking at that, I'm sure.
No.
So all because of a off hit in the 10th frame of the bowler he was bowling
That's
against.
right.
All because of the 7 count when the guy needed an 8 count.
Thank you for reminding me of that, because the roll by Chuck is only possible from a bad moment, tough moment for Jeff Dio. So you're right. It's that's how close things can happen.
Well, when opportunity is given to you, you must run with it.
That is
and
true.
He has done that.
That is true, or Chuck would have been a 1 and done. Final throw for Bill Swiat to post his final score, and he'll get a strike to do that. And it's going to be a 226 to 190 victory as Chuck Jagodzinski sweeps the week here at the Jamestown Bowling Center. He's won 4 consecutive matches. Pretty impressive stuff from Chuck. 3 opponents, and 3 of them went home after matching up with Chuck this week.
Yes, Chuck has schooled all of these bowlers today.
Yes, school may be out, but not here at the Jamestown Bowling Center. We'll talk to Chuck about an impressive run of this week. We'll get Bill's thoughts on his debut on Beat the Champ, and we'll wrap up this week's show. We're back from the Jamestown Bowling Company right after this. 126 to 190 victory for Chuck Jagodzinski that gives him a sweep of the week for just the second time in the Beat the Champ revival. And unfortunately, Bill, you're the victim of the red hot guy right now.
Yes, I am. I just getting tough shots. Couldn't carry that well, and he's just hitting them well, and
puts the pressure on you, doesn't it?
It does. And that split for me certainly didn't help.
Right. Sue?
Chuck, you've taken everybody to school this week, making great adjustments on the lanes. How did it go for you tonight?
It was tough, but I tried to start. I think I started with a 4-bagger, so I tried to come out really wild and let him see if he can catch me. Then I have to put my A game back in if he catches me. But
well, you made all the right move. Deja vu. I feel like we've done this before.
We're going to have to clear out some room there in the trophy room for Chuck because he's going to take another one of these home. It's back-to-back weekly wins for Chuck, 4 in a row overall, and he's going to get to go for 5 in a row next week. Thanks to Chuck, thanks to Bill. They're going to get some tickets to the Lucille Ball Comedy Festival coming up in August here down in Jamestown to get them back in town here. So Chuck's not done yet. We're going to see him next week against 3 new Beat the Champ bowlers. Sue and I will wrap up another outstanding edition of Beat the Champ when we come back to the Jamestown Bowling Center here on Beat the Champ. Well, we were talking about bowling movies earlier in the show, but I think it's safe to say we've got our own Beat the Champ kingpin in Chuck Jagodzinski. Back-to-back trophy wins on Beat the Champ, only the second to do that, and he's won 4 in a row, only the 4th that's pulled off that many, and he's the second guy to sweep a week. You can't get much better than the way he's bowling right now.
Yes, we got to see a lot of new bowlers, but in the end, the veteran experience did pay out this past week as he schooled everyone on making moves and making the proper adjustments, and it paid off for him.
Yeah, that's what being a veteran bowler and knowing how to handle the conditions winds up learning how to handle that big trophy once again. So Chuck Jagodzinski is not done yet. He comes back next week. 3 new bowlers in line to try to knock Chuck off the top of that hill. We'll be with you next week as we continue our run at the Jamestown Bowling Center. Make sure you join us to see if Chuck can stay hot and continue winning. For the whole gang here at WBBZ and Hall of Famer Sue NAWOJSKI, I'm Paul Peck. We'll see you next week on Beat the Champ.